G'day guys, this is Andrew Price here from BlenderGuru.com, coming at you with a new tutorial, and quite a big one. This time we're going to be modeling this space corridor that you can see right here. It's a very complex scene. This tutorial is going to be in two parts. This part covering the modeling aspect, and then in part two we're going to be getting into the materials, the lighting, the compositing, all that extra final stuff to complete the final image. So in this tutorial it's going to be all about modeling. There is quite a lot of modeling, as you can probably see from looking at the final image. This is what the actual, what you should have by the end of this tutorial. So you can sort of see the amount of work that is involved. So we are using arrays. So actually the only portion that we're going to be modeling is essentially this front portion here, and then putting in a bunch of these electronic panels. Now these panels are probably going to be the most time consuming aspect of it, so I might do a little bit of a time lapse there instead of recording the full thing, just to make sure you guys don't get bored, and so I'm not talking the entire time. But yes, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff and having a bit of fun with it. I've actually, I guess, attempted this type of scene in the past. I've been wanting to do a tutorial on it for a while, but it's always just, I always deemed it far too time consuming, and I never got around to it. But now I'm finally taking the plunge. I'm hoping you guys are all strapped in and ready to come with me on the ride, to put a really weird analogy to work. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So open up now a new scene in Blender. Now I should state that the first thing you need to know when you're creating something like this space corridor type scene is you need to be have a very firm image in your mind of exactly what it is that you want to create. So if you want to create this exact type of space corridor, then great, you're going to be following this tutorial and you'll be fine. There are other types. There's like a clean, sort of look that you can go for, and essentially you need to be thinking about the actual practical use of what it is you're designing. So in this instance, I sort of had like an industrial type spaceship. So this is like the interior, maybe the engine room or something where the engineers or mechanics work. So everything's dark, everything's kind of very dirty. There's some smoke coming out of the vents and stuff like that. It's not very polished. So it's the exact opposite of sort of a luxury kind of cruiser or whatever. So you don't want to you don't want to confuse the two. You don't want to add in some parts from other things. So you always want to be thinking about the actual practical use of what it is you're designing. So all this stuff here on the right hand side, the panels and everything, you need to be thinking about what's its actual practical use. And then sort of going with that. And then once you have that idea in your head of what the actual use is, then you can start thinking about the stuff that goes in there. Because if you just come at it from the point of view of, hey, it's a space corridor, then you're going to be drawing blanks through the later stages when you're trying to fill in space and try and make it look realistic. So you want to have that firm image from the very start. What is the actual point of the scene? What are you trying? What sort of message? What sort of scene are you trying to portray? Anyway, now we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get cracking. So I'm on a completely new scene right now. The only thing that's there is a camera. My default scene's a little bit different to yours, but that doesn't matter. So the first thing we're going to be modeling is actually what looks kind of like this door frame. It's kind of like a structure. Now, I suppose the practical implication behind having like this windy kind of bendy type thing, I mean, there's not really all that much practical use for it. Like, it would make a lot more sense if it was like a straight kind of structure, because that would obviously have a lot more structural strength to it than something that is curvy like this. However, we also need to be thinking about the theme of it, which is a sci-fi theme. So I realized through experimentation and having a look at references and stuff like that, that curved objects and kind of like not... basically anti-real world objects, they look more sci-fi, more science fiction-y than stuff that has a practical use. So it needs to be practical, but also needs to be, sci-fi. Anyway, okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a plane, and I'm going to rotate that plane by 90 degrees. So I'm just imagine that this door frame here is just having a look at the silhouette. So we're just going to be modeling just from that sort of exact side view. So I'm going to start by adding in some loop cuts, and I'm going to go with, let's say, that many loop cuts. That looks actually, no, that's not right. That many. Okay, that'll be fine. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is grab these two loop cuts right here, and I'm going to extrude them outwards, or move them outwards like that. And I'm going to grab this edge loop at the top there, and I'm going to move that outwards to about there, like so. Let's just look at it from here. Okay, and you can move that in a little bit more, and then move these down so it's a little bit tighter, I guess. So something like that should be fine. And then I'm going to create a loop cut right across there, and I'm actually going to delete these points right there, delete those vertices, and now I'm going to add a mirror modifier, like so. And you can see I've now mirrored it exactly as it should. And actually I'm going to apply the rotation of the plane, and just so that it's on the right rotation, which is the Z axis, like that. Okay, and now I'm just going to scale this inwards to be like so. And I'm going to create a loop cut right across the middle there, and then I'm going to delete that those vertices right there. And now I'm going to use the axes on the other side as well, so on the Y axis. So now you've got it mirrored on both sides, just like that. So we're just saving time as we do this. So now creating the sort of width of the door, I'm just going to extrude that outwards. Let's say we're going to create a few little cuts. So just somewhere about there, I'm going to extrude that outwards to about here, and I'm just going to create an extra layer to the door. So something that's a little bit too thick, about there. And then I'll create another layer, let's say about here, extrude that out to be about there. So this is just a creative choice. So having these kind of layers here, again, I had a look at some reference images. I saw a trailer for a Star Wars game, and they had a very similar space corridor, and so a lot of my ideas were based off of that trailer. And I noticed they had these kind of this layering effect and stuff, and I thought it looked kind of cool, so that's why I've incorporated it into mine. So something like that. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some little areas which have kind of been sort of indented into the design. So I'm going to grab just that top face right there. I'm going to hit extrude, then cancel. Then I'm going to scale it inwards, like so, and then extrude it inwards to be just like that. So you've just got kind of like this little cutaway area in there, just like so. And then I'll create another one right here, scale it inwards, and then extrude it, like so. And then this one here as well. You want to make sure that it's some right sort of proportions there. Actually, I might go ahead and delete that face at the bottom there, and then I'll just move this one down. Turn on clipping. Okay. And then I'll extrude that inwards, like so. And now what I'm going to do is just create a little handle just right here. So again, this is all just using an imagination. So there's a little handle here, so I guess it has some kind of practical use. I don't know why there's a hand. I mean, it's a pillar. Like when I was modeling it, I kind of thought, oh, this is an actual door, you know, like a door frame that, you know, the door could kind of swipe across. But there's no door there. There's like a pathway in the way. So I put a handle there, and I don't know, it looks cool, but I guess there's not really any practical use to that. But anyway, doesn't really matter all that much. Okay. I mean, I should say that the hardest part of this tutorial is actually coming up with ideas for how to make something look science fiction-y. So if you've got a bit of background in concept art and stuff like that, then that'll definitely help you in this tutorial. I pretty much have no experience in that whatsoever, so I just kind of winged it for this thing. I got out my little notepad and I just started sketching some things, and I looked at reference images of like a bunch of real-world practical things like you know, servers, like a server rack or something like that, and just kind of went with it and tried to make something as realistic as possible. But yeah, anyway, my point is you don't need to be an expert. You can just give it a go and learn as you go. That's one of the best ways, I think. Okay, now for this area right here, I'm just going to extrude this inwards like that. I'm going to create a nice little cutaway area in here, and oh, it's a little bit too close to that handle on the inside, so I'll just create that a little bit thicker and move that back. Okay, that's cool. And what I'm going to do is put some what looks kind of like power cells or something else that's science fiction-y type looking. It's basically these little cylinders, look like these little pipes or something in there. So I guess if you're an engineer or something, you could come past and change one of those little things, maybe like a fuse or something like that. anyway, that's the kind of the idea that I was going for. I should state also, when you're adding things in, you want to make sure that you have the minimal number of vertices as you can get, or get away with, I should say. So I'm going to go with 12 vertices for this particular use, because once you get, use the array modifier and stuff like that, you can get far too many polys, and your computer will have trouble rendering it. So for my final scene, I rendered it with cycles, and I wanted to render it using my graphics card, because the graphics card is obviously a lot faster renderer than the CPU, but I had far too many vertices, so I had to use the CPU, and it took like an overnight job to render the scene, which, shouldn't happen. It's, yeah, anyway. So I'm just going to grab that little canister there, because it's resting on that little origin point, and I'm going to selecting our main door here as well, the main pillar, I should say, and I'm going to hit Control J. Okay, so now that cylinder is now part of it. Oh, I've got a little vertice there. I'll move that, get rid of that. Scale that down, move that upwards, and I'm going to extrude that, move it up, extrude that. So this is like a little plug, I guess, that's in the top there. And then this is going to be the actual pipe, and I want that pipe to be curling inwards to this this frame here. So I'm going to move my cursor to the selected that selected row of vertices, and then I'm just going to click where it's going to be meeting that frame there, so just that edge of that that wall right there. And over here in the toolbar, there's a function called spin. So if you click on spin, it now uses that 3D cursor as the pivot point, and it spins it the number of degrees that you put there. So you can use as many degrees as you want. We're going to go with 90, and then you turn down the steps to be as least amount as possible. I'm going to go with 4, and that should be fine. I'm just going to hit Control L, which is going to select that entire, every vertice that's connected to that. And I'm going to duplicate that once. And both of those objects now, and this is in edit mode. You can, if you go into object mode, you can see here you've got the shading. You can select smooth or you can select flat. But if you go into edit mode, you can actually select one portion of the mesh to be smooth. So that's what I'm going to do now, just in edit mode, selecting smooth. And you'll notice that when you do that, it's got this kind of weird smoothing effect there. So you want to go ahead and use the edge split modifier. And that has obviously then fixed that problem nicely. Okay, cool. So to the rest of the mesh here, I'm just going to extrude this upwards a little bit here, and this is going to create kind of like a footing for the ceiling and for the ground. And at this point right here, I'm going to add another little detail, and this is going to be a lamp, which is going to shine light onto the ceiling or the floor, because it's now mirrored on both of those, obviously. I'm just going to create a little sort of casing, like a little roof for this light. So I've just duplicated those two vertices there, and I'm just creating this little sort of cutaway there. Okay, and select that like that, and I'll delete that vertice right there. Okay, cool. So once we get into the next part of the tutorial where we're going to be actually adding in the materials, I'll make that part, that wall right there, I'm going to make that a separate light. So that's going to cast light inside that little area, and it should look quite nice. Okay, cool. All right, so the door frame is essentially finished now. So I'm just going to grab this this edge loop right there, and I'm going to extrude this outwards, and this is going to create the wall on the outside. Now, actually, this wall won't be that visible because if you have a look at the final image here, you've got a whole bunch of stuff in the way. You've got panels, you've got pipes and everything like that. But it, of course, helps you to kind of visualize where everything is going to go. So I've extruded that outwards. Now what I'm going to do is actually move in edit mode. I'm going to move everything to the right of that origin point right there. And then over here in the mirror modifier, I'm going to click on X, which is now going to mirror it to the exact other side. Okay, now I'm going to move the camera in, and I'm going to start positioning it where I want everything. Now I've just grabbed both of them, and I'm moving the entire scene just so that it's resting on that grid floor, which will help, with perspectives and stuff like that. So now, depending on how tight you want the corridor as well, will depend on how far you should move them apart. It'll help you to visualize it if you add in the array modifier now. So adding in that array modifier right here. Make sure that the edge split modifier is always last, so make sure that it's at the bottom. And for this array modifier, I'm going to make it from x-axis, I'm going to make it y instead, and I'm going to increase the count to be about 6, I think should be fine. And then at the end there, we're going to have the door. And you can, make it wider or longer if you want. I think for mine, how many did I have? What's that, like 8 maybe? I don't know. I think it would look a bit nicer if the door is actually closer to the camera. So I'm just going to go with 6. That's fine. Okay, cool. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and model in the ground. So the floor and then the ceiling. So we're going to actually make separate objects for those. So I'm going to just snap my cursor to that location right there. And I'm going to add a plane. And I'm going to move this plane to the bottom. And this is going to act as the floor, obviously. And I want to scale that up just so that it fits to the sort of dimensions of our object right here. So if I now just select that plane, then select Control J, it'll now make it the rest of, it'll make it part of the rest of that, the object, whatever. You can see it's now applied it to the roof as well. So that's kind of good. It's kind of saved us time, I guess. But we want to now apply the mirror modifier so that we can make altercations so that the ceiling and the floor have different things. Anyway, we want to turn off the mirror so it's not mirroring the floor and the ground. I mean, the floor and the ceiling. But first of all, I'm just going to make sure that this is actually matching. So you know what? It doesn't matter. All right. I'm trying to make sure I do everything well, but also fast, and I'm kind of tripping over myself here. Anyway, I'm going to apply that mirror modifier. Now I'm going to add the mirror modifier again. Oh, actually, hang on. What did I do? No, wrong one. Z. Okay, there we go. So I want to apply that mirror modifier, like that. Now add in the mirror modifier again. Make sure that it's placed at the top. And then add the X and Y again. I think it should be X, not Z. X. Yes, excellent. Okay, cool. All right. Now for this, we can pull that plane to be back so that it's in line with where, because obviously we're dealing with mirror modifier, it's only half of it, so we've pulled them back so that it's snapped into location. And we want these 2 planes here, we want them to actually be in the exact same line along that edge loop there, because you can see there's actually a gap between where everything meets. You've got like overlaying stuff and stuff like that. So that's what happens if you have something that sticks out further than something else, because we're dealing with array modifiers. So we just want to make sure that everything is in the same place. So I'm selecting all of those vertices right there. I'm hitting S, then Y, and then 0, and that's going to slightly move everything to make sure everything is in exactly in line as it should be. Alright, now I can actually move this plane because of course we're dealing with the mirror modifier, so that it's half like that. Okay, now dealing with the floor, what I'm going to do is just create a loop cut, and I'm going to leave it to be about there, and then I'm going to grab that face and I'm going to extrude that downwards. Just like that. I'm going to delete both of these vertices, and now we have a floor that is cut away. And in that floor, we're going to be placing in some fluorescent lighting in part 2. But for now, what we can do is actually place a metal grate across this area here so that the fluorescent lights are underneath it. We'll do the metal grate towards the edge, sort of one of the, I guess, final touches or whatever. We can just leave it as is for now. Now for the ceiling, I mean, you can add as much detail as you want for this sort of thing. But what I want to do is just create sort of like a hollowed out part, or sort of like the ceiling is, like for my final image, I made it so that it was bulging inwards, sort of downwards towards the corridor. But in this example, I'm going to make it so that it's pointing upwards, just to go for sort of a different look. See how it goes. So I'm going to turn on the proportional fall-off tool, make it set to sphere, and then let's just go like that, just like so. And then I'll make this a smooth shader. And then for this vertice right there, I'm going to make that line there, because I want that to actually be sharp. I'm going to hit Control E and then select Mark Sharp. And then you've now got a nice crease, or a sharp area just down that line right there. And then if you want also, you can go ahead and add in a little indent here into the ceiling. Oops. Turn off proportional editing. Extrude that upwards, and I'll delete both of these vertices here as well. Okay, they're gone. And what I'm going to do is, in that area, I'm going to go ahead and drop in a pipe. So I'm adding in a cylinder, just like so. I'm scaling that down, just like this. And I'm going to cut it in half, obviously, because we're dealing with a mirror modifier. I'll make that part of the mesh. And let's move those inwards, just like that. Okay, cool. So, just going to extrude this outwards so that it fits. And now what you can do actually is create a little area where there's like a bulge in the pipe. And this is something that I saw again in that little Star Wars trailer, something that I noticed. I'll link to that trailer, by the way, if you wanted to have a look at it. It's kind of cool. But anyway, the ceiling had like this kind of bulge where the pipe was, you know, bulging or whatever. And yeah, it was kind of like a cool effect. It sort of made it look like, you know, there's something else going on. The more complexity you can add to the scene, the better, basically, and the more realistic and whatever it's going to look. So it's just something to keep a note of in the back of your mind. Now to scale that up is going to be difficult because we're dealing with the mirror modifier. So what you can do is just snap. Let's go snap to that location right there. Actually, no, that's going to be a little bit tricky. Actually, you know what? I'll just leave that as is. I'm just going to make that a smooth thing right here. I mean, you can go ahead and, you know, play with it if you want to, like bulge that out. But that was essentially the kind of effect that I was going to go for, and then make it more vertical as well. But you get the kind of thing I was trying to go for. Anyway, it looks kind of weird, kind of like a snake that's eaten something and it shouldn't have. Anyway, it's kind of weird. All right, that's it's looking pretty ugly actually. I'm just gonna Control Z, all of that. I want to go back. I want to go back. Smooth. All right, don't worry about it for now. That's gonna be fine. That's gonna be fine. I just keep telling myself that. Okay, I'm just gonna select these edges right here, and then these ones here as well. And that's, of course, so that we don't have any gaps in the mesh. Okay, so we've got the ceiling now. We've got the floor in place. Now what we're going to do is get onto modeling those panels for the wall. Now, that's actually going to be probably the hardest part of this whole tutorial. So what I mean by that is these actual wall panels right here. So modeling these individual electronics and all that kind of stuff. That's just really time consuming, and it's kind of annoying if you, as I said, don't have a history in, you know, concept art or whatever, because you just have to come up with creative stuff to sort of imagine, because you're creating a world here, it doesn't actually exist, what sort of stuff could be in there. So it helps if you have a look at reference images and go on Flickr and Google or whatever, and Google stuff like fuse boxes, server racks, things like that, and that'll definitely help make something that looks believable, and it'll also sort of reduce the stress for yourself because you're not trying to think up everything. You've actually got something to model off of. I accidentally hit Control S there, but why not? I'm going to go ahead and save that scene right now. It's always a good idea. Okay, so for the actual panels themselves, what I'm going to do is actually just I'm going to model one of where'd that thing go? That image. It's gone now. All right, let me pull that up again. So I'm just going to be modeling this one area right here, and then we're going to be duplicating that and distributing it throughout the rest of the scene. So we're going to get away with modeling very little and then sort of duplicating it around everything else. So that's just giving you an idea of what we're going to do. So with this cube here, I'm going to scale this down, and I'm just going to make it so that it fits just sort of from that portion to that portion right there. And I'm going to move that face all the way back. And then I'm actually going to delete that back face there. And then move the origin point to that point. And I think we're looking pretty good so far. Okay, and I'm just going to extrude this inwards here. And this is just going to act like a little sort of border around the outside. And then this whole part here, I'm going to move this to a separate layer. And this is where we're going to be doing everything. All the fancy stuff. Okay, so this stuff isn't hard, as I said. It's coming up with creative ideas, sort of racking your brain for stuff like that. It's essentially just modeling really basic stuff. Cables, cords, stuff like that. It's very easy, very very basic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to model a small portion of it, and then I'm going to do something I haven't done in a tutorial before, and that is to use a time lapse. So I'm going to model, one small portion here, and then I'm going to speed up the footage, and I'm going to talk over it and explain what I'm doing. And it's just going to make it so that this tutorial isn't 3 hours long, and it's brief because I know you guys aren't idiots. I know you can figure out how to add a cylinder and move it around so it looks like a chord. You don't need to see it 300 times. So I'm going to save a bit of pain for all of us, and I'm going to speed it up. So anyway, I'm going to model one small portion right here, and then I'm just going to put it on speed time lapse, and you can see how the rest of it is done, because as I said, this tutorial would be incredibly long if I didn't do that. Okay, so I'm just sort of creating like a beveled edge right there, and that's just going to help that. So anyway, first thing I'm going to do right here is I'm going to be extruding that inwards, like so. And this whole portion right here is going to act as kind of like a fuse box. So I'm going to add in some boxes, some cables and pipes and everything else like that. So first thing I'm going to do is just add in a cube, like so. And you want to remove the back face of that cube, just like that. Okay, let's push that in. And then I want to make some chords that are coming out of that. So I'm going to select that face right there, move the cursor to that exact location, and then I'm going to add in a cylinder. I'm going to make the vertice count for that 8. Needs to be fairly low resolution because the camera's not going to be very close to this, so you want to cut down on that. And then I'm just going to move it about. You know how it goes. That's going to be sort of a little, the plug when it connects to the box. So this is acting as, I guess, kind of like a switch box or something. And then you've got cables that are running out of that box. Just to sort of give you an idea of it. I might actually just move this to the other side for now. Like so. And I'm just going to duplicate that 3 times. So it looks like you've got kind of wires coming out of those boxes there. And now I'm going to duplicate that, move it to the exact other side, just like so. And then for this portion, what I want these wires to do is kind of run up the edge there like that. So I'm going to position the cursor to this point about here, let's say, about there. And then I'm going to, in the toolbar, click spin, make it minus 90 degrees, so it's going in the direction that I want. And then I'm going to turn up the steps so that it's a little bit smoother, and then extrude upwards like so. And then for a little bit of added realism as well, I'm going to add in a cube, like so. Scale that down, scale that inwards, move that down, make it flatter. And then move that down to there as well. And these are acting as sort of little brackets. If you can sort of, if you look at reference images of pipes and stuff like that, they want to make sure that the pipes don't move around and shake and whatever else. So they add these little brackets, and that helps everything sort of stay in place. Okay, let's just show everything there is selected. There we go. And then I'll move everything just so that it's a little bit more snug. And then with these pipes, I'm going to select one vertice from each of them, then select them all, then hit smooth shading. Just like that. And then if you wanted, you could also go into the edge loop selection like this. Whoops, not that one. And then hit Control E, mark sharp, and then when you add in a edge split modifier like that, turn off edge angle, then you've got a sharpened sort of point there where it's meeting. So that's something that you should do when you add the pipes. I'm kind of against using the edge angle because it's really finicky and it's really annoying, and I always was just kind of like really angry whenever I used the edge split modifier because that angle was never right. And then I found out the sharp edges thing, so you can actually put in where you want there to be an edge, and it's brilliant. And now I've used it, I just love it, and I use it all the time. And then it's essentially coming up with more detail. So if I just duplicate that box, scale that right down, and then move this across, just like so. Well, let's not duplicate that one. Alright, across, and then this one here. something on the edge there. So these are kind of like little feet where it's kind of sticking to the wall. Just a little bit more detail. And then again, if you wanted to go more, you can add a bevel and stuff like that. Anyway, I've modeled one portion there. I'm sure you get the gist of it, guys. So I'm going to put it onto speed time-lapse now so you can see how the rest of it is done, because it's just adding geometry and then going with it, and it's pretty easy. So now you can just watch really quickly how it's done, and then you guys can go for it. So here we go. Alright, so here we go. At about 10 times the speed, we're now looking at the completion of this little wall panel here. So we're adding in a whole bunch of electronics, stuff that you might see on a spaceship. I mean, you can get creative with it because obviously the spaceship doesn't exist. But yeah, you want to find stuff that looks at least plausible. So down here I'm creating a whole bunch of little tiny light switches. And I kind of thought, you know, what about like an earphone jack? I mean, not for earphones, but you know, some kind of like plug-in port above the light switch. You know, completely random. Just placed it above it, and then here I'm just sort of changing the which ones are on, which ones are off, and then I'm just duplicating one portion and reusing it. And that's something that you should do a lot of. I remember I watched a making of video for Pixar, I think The Incredibles, and they were talking about during the making of it. Around the office, they had a motto which was based off like an old Indian saying, which was use every part of the bull. Meaning that if you create a model, if you create something, try and reuse it later on, basically. And so they had that like printed and like stuck to the wall, and it was like a big motto. And when I first heard it, I thought like that's kind of like a strange motto. I can't really see like why that would be necessary. But after undertaking on this little project here, this little spaceship corridor thing, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're not duplicating things and reusing it, then you are wasting a lot of time. Like, you know, to the naked eye, you can't tell. I mean, on this large scale scene, so long as you do it well, you can't tell if something is repeating that well. So, I mean, that easily. So you can get away with a lot of repeating stuff, and people won't really notice. So here, this was kind of based off like a server rack. So I put a whole bunch of stuff there with air vents in it, and I put little switches next to it, try and make it look a little bit practical. And here I'm making a set of drawers or panels or something to that effect, and I gave them curved edges, you can see right there. So that curved edge, I think I said at the start, but I'll say it again, it really helps to sell the overall kind of sci-fi type imagery look. So yeah, that's why I went ahead and did that. I kind of botched up the modeling here. It's a little bit messy. Doesn't look all that fantastic, but you know, it's as I said, it's a large scene, and you know, you can get away with little mistakes like that. If we were doing like a full-on close-up shot or something like that, we'd probably try and fix it. But you know, you don't want to waste your time doing things that aren't really going to be seen. So yeah, so that's why we're just messing it up and going with it. And yeah, over here we're just making another one of these little panels, I guess. I mean, I'm just watching it at the same time you do. I must say, I like speed modeling videos, to be honest. Like, whenever I see them on Vimeo, I love them. I think they're, regardless of like the skill of yourself as an artist, if you make a speed modeling video, and you speed yourself up making something, you always look really good. So I love them. Like, I wish I could use them more often, to be honest. It just kind of like, yeah, it just always looks really cool. But yeah, always have to do a tutorial, I guess, so I don't really get all that much time to do it. And here, these are these little floppy disk drive, or I don't know, smaller ports or whatever. But yeah, anyway, guys, let me know if you like this kind of method of speeding up a bunch of stuff that is, a little bit boring and repetitive. Because I know some people like to be handheld through the entire thing, but I know you guys aren't idiots. I know you guys can catch the drift. It's just creating geometric shapes and then just doing the same thing repeating over and over. So I figured I could do a speed modeling video and it'd be fine. So but anyway, let me know if you if you like the format or not. But yeah, anyway, that's it. So now let's get back on to the tutorial. So we are at normal speed right now. I'm not speeding anything up. We are now back at normal speed. So, before we move on, the first thing we need to do is to make sure that all of these separate objects are now all as one. So we're going to be then using it obviously in the main scene, so we don't want to have a whole bunch of little tiny objects together. We want them all to be one thing. But before you do that, you need to make sure that you apply all of the modifiers. So if you've got any array systems or mirror modifiers set up, like I have right here, then you need to go ahead and make sure that you apply all of them. Because otherwise, if you go ahead and just make it all one solid object, you'll notice that you lose a whole bunch of stuff because you forgot to apply the mirrors and all that stuff. So that's what I'm doing right here. Yes, I got a whole bunch of stuff I need to apply. I'm just going through it one by one. These little mirrors, these pesky mirror objects. Okay, and once you are confident that you've gotten everything, all of them at once, then you can go ahead, select all of the objects, making sure that you select this this chest or whatever, the panel last, then hit Control J, and that's now going to make it one big solid object, just like that. And it can also help at this stage to, in the toolbar, go ahead and click on Remove Doubles. There you go. You can see it's removed 2,353 vertices. So I'm not sure how it got like that. Maybe it was some overlapping mirrors or some arrays or whatever. But oftentimes there are repeating vertices that are on top of each other. So just go ahead and do that, and then go ahead and recalculate the normals as well if you like. And other than that, we now have one solid object, one solid panel, and it looks great. And we can now go ahead and start using this in our scene. So the corridor I've strangely got on the very last layer, so I'll move that to layer 1, and I'll put my camera on that layer, which is a habit I like to do. Okay, and where is the panel? It is right there. Excellent. Okay, cool. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. Actually, first I'm just going to place it over here. So I should state these panels aren't going to be used in this this tunnel array. So I'm not going to make it part of this object so that it's then duplicated throughout the whole thing. I'm actually just going to place it by hand. And the reason we're doing that is we want to save on computer space, or sorry, save on rendering memory, because I want to render it using the graphics card, not the CPU. So it helps to cut down on as much polys as possible. So because you can see from just the view from the camera up until the second part there, like that, you can kind of see a little bit there, but the wall isn't visible for the rest of it. So if you made it part of the tunnel, then it would just be putting all of that high detail all the way to the back there, and it would be a complete waste because you wouldn't see it, and the computer would be calculating it anyway, and it would just be it's just bad practice. So don't do it. Okay. All right. Good. Alright, so I'm going to duplicate this now. I'm going to hit Alt-D, and that has now duplicated it. Now, the reason I used Alt-D instead of Shift-D is that I want them to be matched. So if you go to the object data up here, you can see there is now a number 2 next to it, which means that if I now make an edit over here, and I go like that, for example, you can see that this one now has the exact same change. So that is really helpful because now, if I was to, wanting to change something in there, or I wanted to apply a material to it or something like that, it would automatically apply it to any other object which is linked to it. So it definitely helps to do that now, rather than suffer the consequences later or whatever. As ominous as that sounds, yeah, it's just good practice, I guess. Okay, alright, so that's looking pretty good. Now one thing I will do, and this will help with the whole repeating pattern kind of thing, I'm going to rotate this one by 90 degrees, like that. And for the other side, I'm going to, excuse me, for the other side, I'm going to rotate it by, again, 90 degrees like that, and then 180 as well. So it should now, if I have a look at it from there, yeah, it should be looking pretty random. So if you look at it from the view of the camera, you shouldn't really be able to notice too much repetitiveness. Like it should look kind of like, this panel here doesn't look as though it matches that side because it's not an exact mirror. Things are switched up, and it looks pretty cool. So what we're going to be doing next is I'm going to create some panels that are along the bottom here, just along this bottom railing there. And we're going to do that by just taking parts out of this mesh and then placing it, making a new object from it, reusing parts and then putting it down there. Before I do that though, I'm going to apply some materials. Now, I said we're going to be doing the materials in the next tutorial, and that is true. However, if I was to do that if I was to just do the modeling now and take parts from this and, you know, do all that extra stuff, it would make more work in part 2 because we would have to be applying the materials to all different parts of the panels, and it would just be silly. So rather, now that we've got it all as one object and they're all linked together, if I create some placeholder materials, then it will make our life a lot easier in the second part. So placeholder, I mean, I'm just going to create a whole bunch of materials that you know, stuff here needs to be. I'm not going to change any of the settings. They're just going to be placeholders so that everything is all ready to go, and then we can start fiddling with the details in the next tutorial. So this first one, I'm just going to make that steel. That's going to be the main material. This one here, let's call this one red plastic. So let's just select all of that. That whole part right there. This one is red plastic. Let's just make that red just so we can see which part is red. And these little handles here as well. I'm going to make all of those handles. I can select them all. Control L. I'm going to make them black plastic. Black plastic. Make them black. Assign. Good. Oh, the little light switch got it as well. That's okay. And let's say make this one here. Maybe make it chrome, or I don't know, shiny steel. Shiny steel. And I'll make that a kind of a blue color. This is the viewport color change, by the way. It won't actually affect the material itself, but it helps to be able to see it in the viewport only, which ones have got the material and which ones haven't. And then so down here, I'm just going to be selecting a whole bunch of stuff. This is kind of one of those annoying tasks as well, I guess, because we've got so many different objects here. It can be a little bit time-consuming to have to go through it all, but, you know, one of those things, I guess. You just gotta do it. Steel. Shiny steel. Oh, I've selected all that stuff up there as well. Okay, alright, one by one then. You know what, I'm gonna put this one on a time-lapse as well. Good, good, good. Everything's going well. Just applying the materials. So this is obviously gonna help you, yeah, later on. And I guess the more materials you have and the more sort of objects you apply different materials to, then obviously that's going to add a lot to the realism as well. And that's going to help to sell the final image. Anyway, I'm going to cut it short there. That's fine. Okay, alright. Well, that's good that we've got that sorted. I'm really glad I did a speed time-lapse because that was a lot longer than I expected. Okay. Okay, so now that we've color-coded everything, or sort of put in material, I don't know, yeah, placeholders, as I said. Now what we can do is, yeah, create those panels to go along the bottom there. So what are we going to do? Let me just go to layer 2 again. I'm going to select a portion of this. Let's just go to the front view like this. You know what? I have to get rid of these. I have to hide them. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to select a portion, let's say this one right there. That looks pretty good. To be about there. Okay, and then I'm going to hit Shift D, and then I'm going to hit P to make it a separate object, and I'm going to move that out the way. And now what I want to do is just create some, I guess some rounded off corner. I've got some little extra pieces in here that shouldn't be there. I'll just get rid of them. Okay, so that edge. Okay, all good. So I'm just going to extrude that outwards, like so, to about there. So I've now got kind of like a little mini version of that one. So I'm now going to do the exact same thing for this one right here. So just select that there, duplicate, hit P, make it a separate object, then select that outer edge again, extrude that outwards, extrude it outwards again, just to create a little border, and then extrude it to about there as well. Okay, and then I might create another one here just for these little server rack things, because they look kind of cool as well. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, if you're a little bit confused, it'll all make sense in a minute. Just move that there, and then that one to about there as well. And I think, you know what, I'll do another one for that one as well. So we've now just essentially just created a duplicate but in portions or in pieces of the original, like that. I'll select that outer edge again. Okay, extrude it outwards, extrude it again just a little bit more, create that beveled edge, and then there we go. Excellent. Okay, cool. So I'm now going to just set the origin point for all of those to be the center of each of them, like that. And I'll now make all of them, let's just put them all just in the center there, and then I'll move them out to about here. Okay, now let's bring back the rest of our scene here. And what I want to do is just rotate them, and also I'll just place them so that they're lining up, so the front of them, I mean, is lining up with everything else. So I might just have to scale them out just to make sure that their edge, oops, oh dear, okay, blast it, alright. So I have to clear the rotation for all of these, just so that I can make some quick edits to it. Okay, oh dear, that's really whack now, isn't it? Okay, so it's all kind of over the place. Oh, it's just to the other side. Okay. I tell you what, man, sometimes these tutorials go well, and then sometimes they go like this, where some things just don't work as you would hope that they would. Anyway, that's just the nature of it, I guess. Okay, so for this one, I'm just going to scale that out, maybe scale it inwards a little bit. So I just want to create kind of like the same look for all of them, that same kind of beveled edge. I guess it's not overly important, so I won't spend too long on this. Oh no, I haven't selected all. Anyway, that's not, I guess it's not really all that important. Okay. But essentially we want them to be about on the same size as each other, like that. Okay. So now, bringing back the rest of our scene here, I'm going to move this to be just underneath our main panels right here, like so. Move them out a little bit, and I can now just start clicking and then moving them across, as I am right now. And another one, where's another one? There we go. Move that one over. That one doesn't fit, that's okay, I'll just move it over there. One of the good things about this scene is that the front part, like this part that's behind this pillar here, yeah, it's completely invisible to the camera. So the camera can't actually see what's behind there. So if something doesn't quite match, you can just, if these panels don't fit, 4 of them across or whatever else, you can kind of mix it up and just, do a whole bunch of different stuff. And yeah, people will be none the wiser that there's actually no scene there or whatever. So that's just how it is. That works pretty well. Okay, alright, so yeah, something I should have done then. I should have hit Alt-D instead of Shift-D, but if you if you don't do that, you can just go ahead and select the 2 objects which are matching, and then just select Object Data, just like that. And if also you wanted to, you could also rotate them. So I've got that one there if I wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit as well. Make it so that it's a little bit more random. Then you can rotate it, just as I have there. And I might have to move it up a little bit. Okay, cool. Alright, so I'm going to duplicate hitting Alt-D. Going to move them across to be there. Alt-D it again for the other side, so that it's about there. And let's bring back the rest of our panels right there. That's good. And then I'll grab these. Let's duplicate them, move them across, so they're about there. Move these ones to there. And so you can see that the scene is coming together very slowly. And you can see by recycling the parts that we have created, we are saving a whole bunch of time. Instead of having to do all of this by hand and model individual panels for this and for that, yeah, we're saving a lot of time. So that's really good. Good habit to get into. So I can assure you, if you had an employer you're working for some company doing something like this, they would want you to have it on a certain deadline, and you can't be coming up with excuses like, oh, I wanted it to look, so it wasn't repeating, there wasn't a repeating pattern or something, The deadline is highly important for a lot of business owners, myself included. So, yeah, it's good practice to get into to prepare for that kind of environment. Okay, so that's all looking well and good. Okay, so this next portion is just creating these little kind of lockers above there. So I'm just going to grab this one, which is that drawer. Let's have a look at that from front angle. Yeah, it's kind of like this little drawer at the top there. So I'm just going to move it to... actually, I might scale it a little bit. There we go. And that will make it look a little bit more unique as well, which is kind of cool. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate that, place one there, another one there, and another one there. So these are kind of like, I imagine, like overhead lockers or something for, when you're on an airplane or something. But obviously there can be like electronics inside or something like that. But it's up high and, I guess they need a ladder to get to it or whatever. But it's not something that needs to be overly accessible. So there are these just little boring panels that are at the top there. And that's fine, I think. I think that works quite well. So maybe something like that. And I'll just make sure this other side over here works as well. I'm trying to piece it as best as I can so that it works well, whilst also not taking up too much of your time or mine. Okay, I think that is looking pretty good. I might, you can see in the background there, one of these might fit in. Yeah, just like that. Actually, I might use this one just so that it's not looking too repetitive from the other one, that other portion I mean. And then another one on the other side. Let's just rotate that. Excellent, cool. Alright, so now what we're going to do is start creating a few little pipes along there, then we're going to create the steel floor and then the bay doors at the end as well. Okay, so to create these steel pipes, they're pretty easy. What you need to do is go ahead and add in a cylinder. And you want to make sure that it's got enough sort of vertices. Go with about 26 perhaps. You want it to look relatively smooth because it's going to be fairly close to the camera. So if it's too low resolution, then it's going to be pretty noticeable to the viewer. So yeah, go for something around about 26 vertices is fine. Now I'm just going to remove both of the faces because this is going to be part of the array system, so we don't need any of the faces there. And looking at it from the front view, I want to drop it in to be about that size there. So looking at it from the viewport of the camera, I guess. Let's look at about there. Okay, cool. And what I'm going to do is just create kind of like, I don't know what you call it. I'm sure there's a engineering term for it or something like that, but kind of like where it's in parts, so it's kind of like been screwed together, and normally you have like nuts around there or something. It's not just like one long big steel pipe. It's kind of in pieces, so they can kind of pull it apart and switch things around or whatever. But anyway, that's what that is right there. And you want to make sure that this point here is relatively the same size as the rest of the steel, so that when you use the array modifier, you can click on merge and it will just merge the vertices, and that will help help it look a little bit swish. Also, it helps to have kind of closed objects, because I've realized that with the Cycles rendering engine, if you don't have like a closed object, I think it can try and calculate the shadows and light and stuff inside an object, even though it's tiny and small. So make sure you can get, if you can, make sure that the object is closed. Okay, so I'm just adding an array here, and I want it to be, there we go, like that, on the y-axis. And I'm just going to move that up there, just so that kind of like that washer point is right in the center there. And actually, I think it needs to be the actual size. Okay, let's just move this down then. Okay, alright, so it's actually needs to be a lot smaller then. Okay. So I want to scale this down just so that it's about there. And I'm going to turn the countdown for that to 2. And I'm just going to just enable that array. And what I'm going to do is just move the origin point to be that point right there. 3D cursor. And now what I can do is just position that exactly on the end and then scale it up just so that it's fit into the middle here. Right, just like that. Oh, actually the pipes aren't even going to meet because we're going to be using... actually, no, they will. Will they? Yeah, they will. Okay, but along there, so that's okay. But anyway, sorry, we're using the mirror thing. Previously I had it so that the array was running like all the way up through the middle there, but we're just going to make it apply to this so it won't actually matter all that much. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and hit on Control J, and then selecting all those points there, I'm going to hit S, Y, and then 0. So they're all exactly the same. And then on that pipe there, I'm going to select it, then hit Smooth, and then making sure that the shader is the way it should be. Oh, you can see you've got some that have doubled up there. So let's just remove any doubles that are there. That's good. Alright. And I'm going to make mark sharp for all of those seams. All of those edges. Edge loops, I should say. Okay. And then smooth for all of it. Oh, we got another one up here as well, of course. Okay. Mark sharp. Excellent. Okay, so we got one steel pipe. I'm going to create one little variation, so like an extra pipe next to it. This one's going to have, let's say, 22 vertices. It's a little bit small, so you can get away with a little bit less, I guess. And I guess it doesn't really matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. Oh man, I tell you what. Sometimes recording tutorials for a really long time, it can be can take a lot out of you. I tell you what. Got to try and find stuff to fill the void. And oftentimes I have nothing to fill the void. So I end up rambling on and on and on. Okay. So I'm going to remove the face at the front and at the back. Like that. And then again doing exactly what I did for the last one. Let's apply an array modifier. Rotation. Set that to 1. Move that back a little bit. Scale it down. Let's turn on smooth shading. Let's hit merge as well. That's something I didn't do on the last one. That's probably why it was doubled up on those points. Extra mark sharp there, and another one there. Whoops, that was clear. Okay, and then hit Control J. Whoops, okay. But apply the array first, then hit Control J. That's what happens if you don't apply the modifier first. Anyway. Okay, and then the final thing, of course, is to make sure that all of that is like so. And sorry that these I didn't finish that sentence, did I? Make sure that it's all lined up as it should be. Just like that. Okay, so now you got some interesting pipes to the side of it, and it looks a little bit better than nothing, I guess. I'm going to create kind of like a steel rod that runs down there. So I'm going to add in a cube right here. Let's just scale this down. Position this to be about here. I'm going to delete this face there. Move that to the left of it. And I'm going to create a mirror. Like so. Actually, let's recreate that face. There we go. And then move that to there. So this is, yeah, like a little railing. I'm not sure why it's like this design. But, you know, it's the future, man. I guess they have, you know, more interesting railings. I don't know. Maybe we will. Oh man, whew. I don't know what to talk about anymore. I'm going to apply that mirror modifier. Hit Control J, and on this guy right there. Whoops. Control L. There we go. Oh yeah. Okay, so I'll remove the faces on that edge. And also remove the faces on this edge. Select all of those, hit S, Y, 0, and then the same for this one right here, S, Y, 0. Excellent. Okay, so now you got a little, sort of the floor kind of taken care of. Now we're going to be doing that steel floor, like the grated steel across the bottom there. So it's used a lot on industrial sites and things like that. So again, this is very fitting for this type of image because it is kind of like the engine room, you know, it's not a luxury liner or anything like that. So you want to make sure that the floor is appropriate. So, just making something. So, I'll just show you a photo of exactly what it is that I'm creating right now. I'll just move that out of the way. Because I'll show you what I'm creating here, just because it can be a little bit harder to kind of guess what I'm going at. So this is exactly what it is I'm creating. It's that industrial floor. So you can see it's kind of got like this little swirly pattern going across there. And I tried to create that to kind of go for a little bit more realism, but it's not worth it. It completely wastes the render time and the RAM, and you can barely see it. So we're just going to be creating some steel bars, basically. It's really, really basic. The only thing you want to be paying attention to is the width of that steel there in comparison to the hole that it makes. So just try and get something as close to that that image that you can see right there. So once I've got one of those pieces there, I'm just going to use the array modifier and then just change that value there to be whatever is suitable in relation to that picture. So if you can kind of imagine how many of those little bars would it be across, I'd say maybe that's like 6 in its place. So we can probably change that to be about there, I would say. And then I'm just going to increase that count, making sure that it's in the spot that it needs to be. Across like so. And I think actually the steel is a little bit thinner as well, so like so, to be about there. Okay, and I'm going to remove the face on each side, like so. Alright, and now I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to create the ones that are going across it. And these ones are going to have a bigger hole. So having, again, looking at that reference photo there, it's kind of, you know, getting that rectangular look to it. So maybe a little bit more, maybe 23, something like that. And then turning down the count of that array, of course. To be about there, I think is pretty good. And I want to point it back to be at the start. Starting about there so that it's all lined up. And I'm creating it in so that I can duplicate that little steel grate there, and it will look like it's in pieces, because you know they don't sell, you know, this entire, you know, like 20 meters of that all in one. They sell it in pieces, of course, obviously. So so that's the kind of that's what I'm going for. So I'm just going to create sort of one piece, and then I'm just going to again duplicate that and, you know, create the rest of the floor with it. Okay, so I'm just going to position that upwards. Okay, and that little thing, the little steel bars that go across it, they're slightly raised off the floor, off the actual, you know, the ones that are going long ways. So that's just one little tiny note there. And that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those, clicking apply. And then I'm going to join them, Control J. Okay, now I'm going to select that end, one of these pieces right here. I'm going to scale up the size, and I'm just going to create some kind of like edges to it, so it looks a little bit thicker on the sides, and then the same on this side as well. Actually, just grab this one since it's already about the right length. Okay, pretty good. And then another one there. And then another one on the other side as well. Let's just, whoops, Control L. Excellent. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to duplicate that. So there are now 2 of them, very close together. And I'm going to scale them down a little bit, just kind of ruining up all the ratios and the measurements that I was trying to use before. But you know, whatever, it's all right. So I'm now just going to select our main everything and just hit Control J, and we now have the steel grated floor in place as it should be. And if you wanted to, you can see you've got a little bit of a gap there, so I'm just going to extend that forward. I'm going to cheat a little bit just by making that last bit a little bit bigger, but you get it. That's the steel floor that's in place now. So now what I'm going to do is just create the bay doors at the end there, and then I think we should be on the home stretch. Okay, so for the bay doors, I'll just show you again what my final one looked like. If I can just bring that up. Picture please. There we go. So it's based off something I found off Google Images, I think from another 3D artist actually, and it's kind of like this zigzaggy type door, and it is actually relatively easy to create. So I'll just show you now. So I'm just going to start with a plane. I'm going to rotate that by 90 degrees, and I'm going to create 8 loop cuts. So I'm just using my scroll wheel, 8 loop cuts like that, and then I'm going to create a cut just along the middle there, just like that. And so I'll just bring up my image here just so I can see it again, because I'm trying to go off my memory here. Okay, so we've got these ones to the side, and then so those ones are to the side, and then this one is also to the side. I guess that's how that works. I think I've got too many edge loops, to be honest. I think I'm just going to go with 6. Try that. No, I needed one more loop cut across there. Or did I? No, I didn't. Okay. Ah, dear. Okay, excellent. Alright. All tutorial etiquette has been thrown out the window. I'm now just basing off my previous one, just alt-tabbing and just copying it. I mean, you guys might as well do this yourself. Okay, anyway. We'll continue. Alright. So, I'm going to delete vertices there, and I'm just going to create an area to the left and right-hand side of it. Okay, so just like this. So this is kind of like that edge that it has that you can see right there. And then I'm just going to expand that out, and then expand that side out as well. And then hit X0, just to make them flat. And then I want to create portions on the left-hand side, which have been sort of cut in. So just selecting, extruding, and then I'm going to push that backwards like that. So I've now got a little cutaway there, and another one on this side as well. And this part here, that's going to be actually stuck outwards. So if I create a loop cut, goes just there. Let's just see if I can. There we go. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm just going to extrude that inwards like so. That'll be fine. I'll move that one inwards as well. Okay, I'm not sure if that's actually right. You know what? I've just completely messed it up. Okay. So I'm trying to go off a model. I'm trying to do it off memory. And I'm kind of making mistakes. Fun fact, it's actually 12:30 a.m. over here at the moment where I'm doing this tutorial. Yeah, I've left it a little bit late, but you know, it's how it gets sometimes. Things take a little bit longer than you expect, and also you spend too long wasting time doing things that you shouldn't. Alright, cool. So selecting these points here, I'm going to make this one portion here, extrude that outwards. There we go. So this is, I guess, just adding a little bit more realism to it. You know, going with the theme, sticking with it, and going for that kind of sci-fi type look that a lot of people like, or that we should be going for anyway. Okay, excellent. And then for the rest of the door, what I'm going to do is just grab that outside edge row there. I'm going to extrude it to be about there. Then I'm going to push it back, extrude it outwards a little bit more, then bring it back inwards to be at the same level, and then extrude it like so. So this is just creating kind of an edge to it. Yeah, just like that. Excellent. And then for this, for the actual door itself, I thought it would be kind of cool to have like a kind of what looks like a bank vault, I guess, that kind of has like a turny thing. I don't know the technical term for it. So like a big wheel in the center there, like so. And then I'm going to create another couple of cylinders with a few less vertices. Let's go 12. Rotate that. Scale that down. Down, down, down. And then extrude it along the x-axis, just like so. Yeah, just like that. And then I'm going to make both of those smooth objects. Object data. Excellent. And then this one here, I'm going to delete that face as well. And then I'll make this one mark sharp, edge split. Excellent. And then you can also go ahead and create a little panel here as well, which is fairly easy. So I'm just creating a cube. So I'm kind of going off like the intercom look that I have for my apartments. Yeah. Living in Korea is pretty much my first time living in an apartment. Coming from Australia, I'm not used to it, but you know, it's not too bad. You get your own little private space, save for the cigarette smoke that wafts in through my balcony window from my neighbor. It's pretty good. It's not bad. But yeah, anyway, I have a little intercom that looks like this. There's a little link there for you. Okay, so this little portion here, this is going to be like the keyboard, I guess. So I'm just going to scale that in, and then if I created another cube, I scale that downwards, then I can kind of create some little buttons. Looks like kind of like a key press thing. So I just move that out, and then create another array right underneath it. Let's go 0, minus 1. Okay, let's go look at it from the front view. Okay, excellent. I'm just going to apply both of those. Grab one of these, and this is going to be like the space bar or something. I'm not sure why they're using like half a keyboard in the future, but you know they are. So we're going to roll with it, just like that. And then if you wanted to, you could, you know, make that a glowing light and whatever. And I guess the second part of the tutorial we will. Anyway, so that is the bay door that is right there. And also we'll go ahead and we'll add a bevel modifier to it. This is something we didn't do for the rest of it, but I think we should. So I'm going to, if you set the apply the scale, that's something that's very important before you use the bevel modifier. Just get into the habit of that. Eee, that looks really ugly. Mark it as sharp. Yeah, so it's trying to apply that bevel effect to the wheel. I don't like that. Let's change that. Okay. Alright. Let's make this 0.05. There we go. So the bevel effect will catch a lot more of the light glinting effect. Like it'll kind of like shine off the edges there. It'll increase the render time, but it will improve the overall look. So I highly recommend using that little trick, the bevel. And I'm going to use it on the rest of everything as well. So I think I used it on the grated floor for mine, so you can go ahead and do that if you want. So the bay door is at the edge there. I'm just scaling it however I see fit, just to fill that void in the background. Okay, and then bevel effect. There we go. Excellent. I'm going to position this at the very top, so it needs to be at the top because you've got the array modifier, you've got the mirror modifier and everything. You want everything to still match, but you also want to have a bevel effect. So I'm going to apply the scale because the, oh, what was that? I don't know what just happened there. I think it just screwed up my everything. Yeah, it kind of did. That's really weird. Anyway, let's just see how it looks. Looking at it from the front view here, let's have a look and see if we can see that bevel effect. It's really slight, really subtle. Yeah, there you go. You can kind of see it's got a little bit of an edge to it. So you want to play with that edge to try and get it so that it looks nice. It's kind of screwed up the pipes here. So, I mean, you know what? I think I'm going to leave that as sort of homework for you guys if you want to work out the bevel effect. I think this tutorial has gone on long enough, and I'm sure you guys are all very tired of following of this tutorial. So that pretty much summarizes it. You can see the, if I just disable that bevel effect, there you go. The roof needs a little bit of detail. It's not too much, just adding a few little pipes and things like that. This is what my final one looked like. You can see it's pretty much the same. And I also added in an air conditioning vent there, which is something I didn't do in the tutorial. But again, guys, it's entirely up to you how much work you put into this. That's really how much it's going to pay off. So I put a lot more thought and effort into my final result. Obviously, with a tutorial, it's very limited for sort of the scope that I can cover. You can see I added in some pipes along the edge there. I added in a few little extra tiny details, but everything else has pretty much been covered in the tutorial. So I'm hoping you guys enjoyed it, hoping you learned a couple of things from it. Next week, of course, we're going to be getting into the materials, the lighting, the compositing, the post-production, all that good stuff, which is going to finish off the final image and create something that hopefully looks a little bit like this one right here, something a little bit cool. So that's it from me, guys. Thank you very much for watching.